Morning. Welcome to One Baha'i, that regular show where I just share a few thoughts about the Baha'i faith. So this morning, it's a little bit rainy out, so I thought I would find a little bit of shelter under a tree. So the weird angle. What can you do? 20 years ago, my friend Samuel and I moved in together into an apartment, and we figured as long as we were living together, we would study the writings. So we decided to study the Kitab-i-Iqan. And pretty much every week since then, for 20 years, we've been turning to the Kitab-i-Iqan and studying it a little bit. Excuse me. So last night, we were on the phone chatting, and we are up to paragraph 215 or so. In 20 years, yeah. And I have a copy of it here, and I want to read just a little bit of it because something occurred to me as we were reading it. Excuse me. Now, you may know that paragraphs 213 to 218 are what are often referred to as the Tablet of the True Seeker. He begins by saying, "O my brother, when a true seeker determineth to take the step of search in the path leading to the knowledge of the Ancient of Days, he must, before all else, cleanse and purify his heart, which is the seat of the revelation of the inner mysteries of God, from the obscuring dust of all acquired knowledge and the illusions of the embodiments of satanic fancy." And he goes on for quite a bit about this. It's really remarkable, some of the details within these paragraphs. We're already familiar with a lot of it from Ruhi Book 1. But there was something in there that caught my attention that I had never noticed before. Towards the end of paragraph 213, he says, "He must never seek to exalt himself above anyone, must wash away from the tablet of his heart every trace of pride and vainglory, must cling unto patience and resignation, observe silence, and refrain from idle talk." Now, as I was reading this, I was thinking about my service as a tutor and accompanying other people through the Ruhi books and, trying to help others in their service to the faith. And that sentence encapsulated it for me. He must never seek to exalt himself above anyone. The moment that we think we're above anyone else, we're no longer accompanying them. We are trying to lead them. And the question is, where are we leading them to? Must wash away from the tablet of his heart every trace of pride and vainglory. There is nothing that will stop someone else from being able to serve than vainglory or pride on the part of someone else. When someone thinks that they know better than another, that's the end of that other person's service, as far as I can tell. They must cling unto patience and resignation. When serving with others, when accompanying others, sometimes you want to walk at a different pace. You want to go faster, or you want them to learn something quicker. Doesn't work. You can't force learning on someone. You can't force service on anyone else. Patience and resignation, those are two of the answers. And then he says, observe silence and refrain from idle talk. Okay, now idle talk I get. Don't just speak for the sake of hearing your own voice. But observe silence. That intrigued me. I'd never noticed before, but the word observe. Hello, bird. Speaking of observe, the word observe is often used in this context as in to keep or to maintain. But Baha'u'llah is not asking us to be ascetics, maintaining a vow of silence. He's asking us to observe silence. Now, observe can also mean to see, to notice, to pay attention to. Abdu'l-Baha says that prayer is conversation with God. Well, conversation is two ways. Shoghi Effendi, in a letter to Ruth, can't remember her last name, in a letter to Ruth, he talks about the 5 steps of prayer. And the first step of prayer is prayer and meditation. If prayer is conversation with God, then saying the prayer, speaking those words that Baha'u'llah has given us for our heart to say, speaking those words is like talking to God. Whereas the meditation, to me, is like the listening, the observance of silence and the observing of silence, the paying attention to it. When we take that time to notice the silence and to pay attention to it, that's when we hear the voice of God in everything. The Buddhists speak so much of this, and there's so much in the writings of the Buddha about observing the silence and noticing the silence and paying attention to it. A famous musician once said that it was the silence that made the music, the silence between the notes. I find it interesting that I'm talking about silence. So maybe I'll just spend a few more minutes here sitting under this tree and listening to nature this morning in the rain. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to reading your comments and hearing your thoughts on this. And I guess we'll talk tomorrow. Happy Rizwan.